When Ninja Gaiden released the United States in March of 1989, it was nothing less than a cinematic masterpiece. It was, in fact, the first Nintendo game to feature cinematic cutscenes and employed techniques such as close ups and alternating camera angles, coupled with a movie score and sound effects to tell the story. And what a story it was! For those of us skilled enough to beat its incredibly challenging levels, we were treated to a story with ninjas, demons, mysterious women, archaeologists, and the CIA, all wrapped up in a little let's save the world bow. Ninja Gaiden was super hard, but it was super fun. Today we're going to take a look back at Tecmo's Ninja Gaiden, talk about what made it so special, and compare its depiction of ninjas to their real-life historical counterparts. Curious to learn about all things ninja? Stick around and join us as we take today's trip down memory card lane. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I hope these words find you well. Hello and welcome to the 27th episode of our video game nostalgia podcast, A Trip Down Memory Card Lane. Each week, we take a look back at the current week in gaming history, we pick a single game from it, we talk about it, we try to teach and learn something new about it or the world around us. I'm David Casson, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, who has been jumping out of places and screaming, "Ninja!" before running away for as long as I can remember. My brother, my co-host, Rob Casson. Rob, how's that ninja training going?
Oh, Dave, it's going pretty well. I'm learning chakra control quite well. I can almost stand on water.
Chakra control, huh?
Yes, absolutely.
Is that even part of ninja training?
Yeah, duh. I'm trying to be a shinobi. Haven't you ever seen Naruto?
No.
No. You should watch it.
Should I?
Yeah, you might like it. I don't know. I know Ryan did.
Yeah. So some Ninja Gaiden, huh?
Absolutely. But Dave, before we begin, we do have to say a special happy birthday this week.
To who?
To the 25th anniversary of Pokemon.
Really? It's Pokemon 25 this week?
It sure is. And folks, we want to bring a great point that we brought up with a Zelda episode previous. We here focus on the Western release here in America, because for most of our listeners, I'm guessing, you do live here in the States. So we don't really talk about the Japan release dates because none of us are really there for them. You have a lot better chance of reliving this nostalgia for the releases right here in the USA. But of course, we can't ignore the fact that it is 25 years for Pokemon, and absolutely, once that time comes around later this year, we will be talking about it.
So it's 25 years for United States just later in the year?
Correct.
When later in the year? Do you remember?
It's on our calendar.
I know it is.
Off the top of my head, I want to say it's September, but I don't feel like that's right.
No, it is. You are correct. It'll be our September 30th episode.
Ah, there we are, September 30th.
September 30th. So like 6 months and then some from now we'll cover Pokemon 25 years of Pokemon, which if I remember correctly, you are stupid excited for.
Abso-freaking-lutely, Dave.
That is not my series, but that is absolutely your series.
Right you are. But anyway, now that I've been off on my tangent, Ninja Gaiden.
You have a tangent? Wow. So
like that, I bring us back in.
Yeah, Ninja Gaiden. Gaiden? I don't really know. Ninja.
I think it could be Gaiden, it could be Gaiden. I'm used to German, so I think it's Gaiden.
We'll go with Gaiden, Ninja Gaiden. I always used to call it Ninja Gaiden. I played this a lot as a kid. I'm not even gonna lie. We had it. It was hard. That's what I remember about it. It was hard. And it's really funny too because do you know? I mean, we'll cover a little bit as we get into it. But do you know what made this game so unique and like special at the time?
I don't honestly.
It was the cinematic cutscenes. It was really the first NES game that had cinematic cutscenes in it. And yeah, it's funny that when you learn that now and you look back and you're like, huh, because it just was, when there's not, for me, this was still really early. I mean, it came out in the States in 89, I would have been 5. And so this was early. And so you almost think, cutscenes were always there for me because I was so young at the time. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
It's kind of like how they are for you. You don't really know a time before any of that stuff because you came up in the what PS2 era, PS3, PS2, 3, I guess 2,
Um, I mean,
2001,
I still remember the original PlayStation, or rather the PS1.
which would have been 95, and then PS2 would have
Oh,
been
okay.
2001.
So yeah, PS2 is when I was growing up, starting to game.
Right, yeah. So yeah, March of 1989 we got it. Came out in December of 1988 in Japan. Ninja Gaiden is a side-scrolling cinematic action platforming game developed by Tecmo for the Nintendo Entertainment System. When it was released in Japan, it was known as Ninja Ryukenden, which I probably butchered, but it means Legend of the Ninja Dragon Sword. And since I butchered it at the time, it was deemed that that title was going to be too hard for Western imbeciles like me to say, as I just proved. And so it was renamed to Ninja Gaiden, which literally means Ninja Side Story. But it's not a side story or a spin off of anything whatsoever. They just liked the title because it sounded cool.
Nice.
I know, right? The localization, though, is kind of fascinating. So, when the game's text was translated from Japanese to English, the game obviously needed to be reprogrammed to accomplish this. And so, there were, localizations were done in different ways. In this case, the Japanese writers would write rough translations in English, and then they would fax them over to the American Tecmo division, who would edit it and put it back together, kind of taking their words and putting it in English in a context that an American English speaker would understand. And then they fax it back and make more changes and fax it back. And they would go back and forth doing this until they came to a localization that they all kind of liked and agreed on. Fax machines for the win. You know, just a little fun fact. If it's funny to me to think about that, like someone changed the word and then they faxed it, and then 5 minutes later it showed up elsewhere. They rearranged some words and faxed it back, and I could just imagine that they would spend like, it's not like these cutscenes were they're NES cutscenes, right? They're a sentence, they're two sentences, and someone probably worked like a whole week on something like that. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
So there is a Ninja Gaiden arcade that was developed at the same time. They are not the same game, however. So the arcade version is a side-scrolling beat 'em up that's more like Double Dragon, or I suppose because we did it recently, River City Ransom. Whereas the NES one here is a platform game. Have you had a chance to play any of the remakes later on? They did a Ninja Gaiden, what original Xbox would have been the first one, maybe. No, it would have been original Xbox. I think you got Ninja Gaiden, maybe Ninja Gaiden 2, Ninja Gaiden Black. I
I
don't
haven't
know.
played any of the games.
No?
Yep.
You would actually really like it if you are a fan of, and I know you're a fan of Devil May Cry, so I can say this very confidently. If you're a fan of that type of gameplay, you would very much enjoy the recent remake of it because they're very much that same style of platforming and hack and slash that Devil May Cry is.
Okay.
Um,
I'm
and
definitely
it's
planning on giving it a try. It looks fun.
it's hard. The original game was very much known for its difficulty, so when they made a modern remake, they kept that same notion. They made it very hard, and so basically, you have a very difficult action hack and slash. I guess it's somewhere in between Dark Souls and Devil May Cry in that respect. So, I
That
really
sounds
do,
awesome.
I really do think it's right up your alley, and it's something that you should add to your repertoire.
I plan on it. Absolutely do.
So yeah, so the arcade game was a side-scrolling beat 'em up, but this version wasn't. So what kind of happened is while they were making the arcade version, Tecmo basically the term ninja was really getting popular in North America. I'm guessing It doesn't say it, but let's be honest, this is Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle, in its heyday. So I'm guessing that because of the turtles, that the term ninja was getting really popular in North America. And so Tecmo wanted to develop a ninja related game for the
term
Nintendo.
turtles.
What did I just say?
The term turtles was getting really popular.
The term ninja was getting really popuer. Ninjas were
I think
becoming
maybe you
popular.
did say turtle or ninja.
I don't know. The term ninja was getting really popular because of the turtles. And so Tecmo wanted to develop a ninja related game for the Nintendo alongside the arcade version already being developed. And so they tapped a guy named Hideo Yoshizawa, and he developed and directed the NES version. But he wanted to make a game that drew inspiration from Mario, and so he decided to work on a platform game instead of a beat 'em up. Because the arcade version as a beat 'em up took inspiration from Double Dragon, and that wasn't his style. And so the gameplay was modeled after Castlevania, but with ninja weapons instead of vampire hunting ones. And a lot of people can see the similarities. They have very similar displays on the top. They move very similarly. There are some notable differences, but a lot of people who played games back in that era and even today can see a lot of similarities between Castlevania and Ninja Gaiden. I definitely had them both, and they both felt very similar. But what Yoshizawa wanted, however, was to make this version different by placing a greater emphasis on the story. And so what he did was he wrote and designed a plot that included over 20 minutes of cinematic cutscenes, which, as I noted, this was the first time that a Nintendo game contained any cinematic sequences like this. And these scenes are used, so the game is divided into acts. It's like, I don't know, 20 stages over 6 acts or something along those lines. And at the beginning of each act, these cinematic sequences are used to introduce new characters. And when we say cinematic sequences, is because they weren't. We had cutscenes before this, right? So like Pac-Man would come up and Pac-Man would chase the ghost. Or in terms of Final Fantasy, you just had a drawn picture and the text underneath it. Like they were just pictures with words, if that makes sense. And what Ninja Gaiden did was it used cinematic techniques, so camera close-ups. The camera moved to go close up on someone, or you got alternate angles of a scene. You had different background music. You had different sound effects. It was more of a moving picture. I mean, it wasn't elaborate because there's only so much you could do with the Nintendo, but it wasn't a stationary screen in which you read what was going on in the middle either. It tried to be more like a movie, which was pretty damn cool. And like we said, it was the first of its kind. I try to think back, Rob, and it's hard when you go back to the early gaming. It's probably hard for you going back to that early PS1, PS2 era. And I think about other games um that had cinematic sequences back in the NES, and I can't think of many. I know they were out there. I know it became commonplace. Hell, I can think of we had a game called Tailspin, which the beginning of it,
Mhm.
right? The beginning of it had a cinematic sequence.
Wasn't
DuckTales
it
had
literally from Tailspin, the sequence?
the show.
Yeah, wasn't it like the opening from it? Maybe
Yeah,
yeah, it's been a
no,
while
it
since I
was. No, you're right. It was. Same thing with DuckTales. DuckTales had the same thing. So I guess I'm wrong. I guess I can think of a lot of games that had it, but more so what sticks out in my mind is, all the stuff later on, the SNES, and then by the time we got to PlayStation, we were in full motion video sequences, and now
right.
now we're just I gotta tell you, I gotta do a side note. So over the weekend, and actually I wrapped it up last night, I finally finished playing The Last of Us Part 2. And right before that, I played the first part, and I am never not in awe of how far we've come. That's just it. It's awesome how far we've come. How it's so cinematic and like watching a movie and conveys such emotion. And yeah, it's pretty cool. There are some games that just stick with you, I believe. We all have special ones. Like we've talked about Final Fantasy VII and talked about how people feel about it and how it's special to a lot of people. And I've always kind of felt that way about the Last of Us series. It's one of those stories that just sticks with you. At least sticks with me. It's a really good series. I don't know what I'm going to do next, frankly.
I don't know, Dave, but we should probably get back to Ninja Gaiden.
Should we?
Ninja Gaiden.
Or
We
which
should probably
game?
get back to Ninja Gaiden.
Ninja Gaiden or Ninja Gaiden? Which one? Which one
Ninja
you went?
Gaiden.
Okay, we'll talk about Ninja Gaiden. We'll talk about Ninja Gaiden another time. How's that sound?
Sure, yeah.
With these cinematic sequences, the plot was pretty straightforward. Ninja Gaiden features, I guess, what else but a ninja, and his name is Ru Hayabusa, and he seeks revenge for the death of his father, which gradually finds him involved in a sinister plot that threatens the entire world, you know? So I remember the sequence, the game kind of opens with Ru's father being killed. And what was Ru's father's name? It was a plain American name like Ken, I think it was. So Ru's father is killed in a duel with an unknown assailant. And afterwards, he finds a letter from his father that tells him to go find an archaeologist named Walter Smith in America. And so he goes. That's the story. And along the way, he gets involved with a mysterious woman. He gets involved with the CIA. He stumbles along some sinister plot to worship our, rebirth, reincarnate, or whatever it's called, demons during a lunar eclipse. There's all sorts of weird stuff that goes on during this game. And I don't remember all of it. I mean, I do remember all of it. I did my research for this, watched video and stuff, but early on, because this game was so hard, I don't think this is one that I ever beat. And I do think you get unlimited continues if I remember correctly. Well, okay. I know you get unlimited continues. This is on the Nintendo Switch NES library, and so I played this recently too. I played this recently, so yes, but I still haven't beat it. Hey, you watch speedrunners. You've never watched anyone play this game?
I mostly watch speedrunners of games that I've played. So
I
like
gotcha.
Super Mario or Super Mario World, the 3 or no. What's the one on Switch?
Super Mario 3D thingamabob?
No, 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 no. The fun one.
Mario
Odyssey. Mario
Maker? Oh,
Odyssey.
Odyssey. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I
Yeah,
gotcha.
Odyssey or like Colby was really into watching Resident Evil speed runs. I watched Dark Souls speed runs, but like yeah, no, I never watched like the big ones for games that I haven't played because I just didn't know enough about the game to know why like speed running it was
One of the speedrunners I watch, or one of the Twitch streamers I watch, is the cowboy speedrunner Arcus.
okay.
And Arcus does the Arcathlon. It's been a while since I've watched him. Ever since we started doing this podcast, for some reason I haven't had as much time to take in stuff. I wonder how that works.
Hmm,
Anyway,
weird.
he does something called the Arcathlon where he plays through a bunch of games, Mario Brothers and Ninja Gaidens and all of them. But I think he does this game in no time at all. Hold on 1 second. I'm gonna look him up really quick because I have him linked right there. His best time on the original Ninja Gaiden is 11 minutes and 38 seconds. That's how long it takes this man to beat this game.
And you didn't even beat it.
I know. I mean, he makes it look so freaking easy. Oh, and he's live right now, actually speedrunning Ninja Gaiden 2. He's doing a practice
Oh
on
wow.
his speedruns in Ninja Gaiden 2. His best time in Ninja Gaiden 2 is 10 minutes and 13 seconds. And I'm going to shoot this over here. Look, just so you can see who I'm talking about in the chat room. Look at the picture that pops up. He's silly. Yeah, so Ninja Gaiden, he does in 11:30, Ninja Gaiden 2 in 10 minutes, Ninja Gaiden 3 in 12 minutes. He can beat the original Super Mario Brothers in 4 minutes and 58 seconds, Super Mario Brothers 2 in 8 minutes and 52 seconds. And then he does Super Mario Brothers 3 Warpless, which is his biggest. It takes him 54 minutes and 54 seconds to do that. The original Legend of Zelda in 29 minutes and 44 seconds. Zelda 2 in an hour and 19 minutes. Castlevania in 11 minutes and 38 seconds. And then Batman in 9 minutes and 59 seconds. And that's his run that he plays multiple days a week. Isn't that crazy?
That it is.
Oh my goodness. Anyway, you know, Ninja Gaiden is a platforming game, and honestly, you can stick to walls and jump off walls, and it's the earliest game that I can remember
One of
ever
the walls
grabbing.
is definitely an interesting mechanic.
Yeah,
For this early on of a game, I should say.
he's singing. He sings while he plays. It cracks me up. Oh man. Yeah, the first one and the second one play very similarly, so this is essentially what it is. Anyway, oh, he's almost at the end right now, actually. So yeah, so it's a side-scrolling platformer. You can jump on walls. Rue uses a katana, which is a dragon sword, and he's got secondary weapons like throwing stars, a boomerang throwing star, trolling fireballs, and he's got this jump and slash thing that's kind of, I mean, a lot of it's just kind of platforming, if that makes sense. That's the important thing is platforming. And that's what I suck at even to this day. I still struggle with platforming. How about you? Are you okay with platforming?
It really depends on the game. There are some where I'm great at it, and there are some where it's absolutely impossible for me.
Really?
Oh yeah,
I don't know. Look at that cinematic cutscene, Rob.
that's pretty great cinematic cutscene, Dave. Just a lot of shaking and noise. Oh, 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 oh. Just falling apart. Heck yeah.
Yeah, I know, right?
I guess yeah. As far back as I can think, definitely remember this because I remember like the Mario games that I would play had these kind of cinematics in them too. So I guess I didn't realize that this was one of the first.
Well, I mean, you by this time you had Mario 2, Zelda 2. It's about when these came out. We're watching the end of Ninja Gaiden 2, and the tower you play in falls, and it just takes forever. Oh, and then you get the cinematic cutscenes ish. These are more like the single picture ones. Oh, look at that.
Ooh, flashing sword.
So yeah, Ryu Hayabusa uses the katana and he uses throwing stars and he uses fireballs, and I think that's gonna take us to today's lesson, Rob. You ready for it?
Sure am. Dave hit me with it.
I thought that today we could learn all about what else but ninjas. Eh? Eh?
Ooh, ninja. Hell
I know. Well,
yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. How often do you get to talk about ninjas? No,
Yeah, it's
let's
kind
be
of a daily
honest.
thing for me.
Oh yeah. What kind of ninjas do you talk about on the daily?
My training, of course.
Oh. All joking aside, do you ever really remember talking about ninjas in history class at all?
I cannot say that I remember that at all.
Nice. Very nice. For those of you that aren't in the know, ninjas were basically covert agents, like spies, or they were hired mercenaries back in feudal Japan. I think the earliest, and I don't have it in front of me, so I'm spitballing here. I think the earliest written depictions of ninjas are like 5th or 6th century. Truth be told, despite how popular ninjas are in folklore, there's actually very little historical accounts of actual ninjas. The reason what we historians think, hey, look at that, I called myself a historian. I talk
Hmm.
about history every week now. I guess I can, huh?
Yeah, maybe you can, Dave.
Yeah. So what we historians believe is that they're not really written about because ninjas were known to be mostly recruited from lower classes. And frankly, no one ever likes to write about lower classes. They want to write about the famous people or the rich people or the warlords or anything like that. But no one cares about lower classes. It's not like we got a regular Charles Dickens over here or anything.
Well, Dave, another reason could be that if you were really to be written about, you couldn't have been that good of a ninja.
That's very true. That is very true. Unlike Chris Farley, that dude was the best ninja ever.
That he was.
What we do know about ninjas is pretty much what they are known for, which is that their functions were espionage, deceptions, and surprise attacks. So, truth be told though, espionage was their chief role. Using disguises, they would gather information on enemy terrain, they'd figure out where enemy buildings were for attacks, they would gather passwords, they would intercept messengers to get communications. They were literally the regular spies of the feudal Japanese world. You know, aside from espionage, they were also used for sabotage. Sorry,
Sabotage!
I had to channel my inner Beastie Boys there. Thank you. So yeah, so ninjas were often called upon to sabotage their enemies. Their primary form of sabotage was arson. So I guess the trolling fireballs in this game is not that far off, is it?
I guess it is not.
So, for example, in 1558, Rokaku Yoshikata employed a team of ninjas to set fire to Sawayama Castle. Basically, a captain led a force of 48 ninja into Sawayama Castle. They basically used a means of deception where it's called the ghost technique. They stole a lantern that bared the enemy crest, and they made replicas with it. And so anyone who had a lantern with this crest could get into the castle without question, because it was supposed to be that only your people would have lantern with this crest. So they basically made a bunch of replicas of this lantern. 48 ninjas got into the castle, and then they set it on fire, and their army would kind of come in during the chaos, and they won. So there you go. There's deception. Would you call that deception or a surprise attack? Both?
I mean, yeah, I'd say it would be both. I mean, you have the surprise attack part of it, but you also have that they went to made the enemy lanterns and copied them, which would be the deception. They were trying to pin it on someone else.
Yeah. So aside from sabotage, ninjas were also called upon to assassinate enemies. That's probably what we all kind of assume they do all the time, huh?
Absolutely, that's what I thought. I mean, they have a lot of other missions they have to do.
Best known assassinations, obviously, they involve famous historical figures because that's who people write about. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
For instance, the famed Japanese warlord Oda Nobunaga, who had he was just a notorious warlord. He did a lot of really great things, but what he's mostly known for was brutally suppressing his opponents. I mean, anyone who didn't want to join him or anything, he was just vicious too. And because of it, there were several attempts in his life. One such instance that happened in 1571, where there was a ninja by the name of Sukatani Zenjubo who was hired to assassinate him, and he used two arquebuses. Do you remember arquebuses? The weird guns?
No, I can't say it sounds familiar.
Oh, so basically he used two guns and fired two consecutive shots at Nobunaga, but Nobunaga he was known for wearing armor, and the armor basically it was like bulletproof vest, you know. The armor basically not he was injured, but it wasn't mortal basically. And so Sagatani managed to escape and was on the run for 4 years actually before he was caught and put to death by torture. I'd hate to be living in fear for that man catching me for 4 whole years. It's kind of awesome that guy lasted for 4 years, frankly. I don't really know what else to say about that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a long time to be on the lam.
So in 1573, Manabe Rokuro, he attempted to infiltrate the castle and assassinate a sleeping Nobunaga. He was also unsuccessful in doing so and was forced to commit suicide, after which his
Oh,
body was openly displayed in public. How
oh,
cruel, right?
that's dark.
I know. But hey, guess he was shamed. And then I don't know which is worse, the fact that he was forced to commit suicide or that his body was openly displayed in public. They're both pretty gnarly, frankly.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So what did ninjas wear? Because that's kind of the thing, right? We can compare them to all the ninja games that we've played recently, Ninja Gaiden included. And I hate to break stereotypes, but typically you see ninjas clad in black garb, right? All that, the black face mask and the black everything.
Yep.
Yeah, that's not the case. Unfortunately, that there's really no written evidence to suggest that they wore this attire. In fact, as spies, it was much more common for them to be disguised as civilians. And so they used all sorts of disguises like priests, entertainers, fortune tellers, merchants, and monks. No black garb in the mix. I mean, maybe someone did, but it definitely isn't what they're known for historically. Now, with that being said, we may have broken that stereotype, but most of the others actually stand true. So they did use katanas. That was their weapon of choice. So woohoo katana wielders, you were in the clear. You like katanas, Rob?
I think they're pretty cool.
They did use throwing stars. They also used darts, knives, and spikes. So all the stuff that you see ninjas throwing in the movies is pretty true. Do you remember that scene in Kill Bill with the chain and the sickle?
Sure do.
You do? Do you actually?
That
Kind of.
scene, yes.
Oh yes, that scene. The scene at the end when she's going up against everyone. So the sickle on the chain is actually true. They did actually use that.
Chamberlain.
Um, they were also known to carry bows, use blowguns, practice with poisons, and use landmines. So they had a little bit of explosives in their repertoire too. And then in terms of tools they did indeed use ropes and grappling hooks. But they also use things like chisels, hammers, drills, picks to, make holes in walls to eavesdrop or holes in walls to climb up or stuff like that. So I guess the modern depictions of ninjas, including the one here in Ninja Gaiden, is kind of true. Yeah.
Say it's pretty accurate.
Yeah, but ninjas are actually really fascinating. You should, pick up a book or Google them or something sometime. There may not be a lot historical representation of ninjas, but there's enough to keep you fascinated to entertain your fascination. I don't even know what word I'm looking for. So, but that's ninjas. That's my quick lesson for the day, Rob. And that brings us back to 1989 when Ninja Gaiden for the Nintendo Entertainment System was released to the world, and it was well received. Huh? So, back then Nintendo Power was the gatekeeper for all the games, and when Nintendo Power came out, I believe the first episode this was in July. They had their top 30 list, and Ninja Gaiden debuted at number 3, just behind Zelda 2 and Super Mario Brothers 2, and it stayed there for a while. It stayed there for 6 months, if not a little bit more. And it ended up being nominated for a ton of different categories at the end of the year Nintendo Power Awards, including Best Graphics and Sound, Best Challenge, Best Theme, Most Fun, Best Character, Best Ending, and Best Overall. And it ended up on winning the Best Challenge and Best Ending. So, people liked it. Electronic Gaming Monthly listed it at number 1 on their top 10 video games list. And at the end of the year, for them, it also won Best Game of the Year for the Nintendo and Best Ending in a Video Game for all the games. So that was kind of nice. Even in modern times, people still look at it fondly, right? So GameSpot listed it at number 10 in their top 10 NES games. IGN did a top 10 NES game review, and they put it at number 17. And back in 2006, Joystick had a user poll where they rated, they asked their or readers rather, to look at the top 10 our best NES games of all time, and this was number 10. But originally it came out in 1989, and back then it's really hard to find reviews. But we're really lucky because back in 2007, it came out for the Virtual Console on the Wii. And so we do have some reviews from the Virtual Console on the Wii that are kind of funny, actually. Rob, do you remember when this came out on the Wii?
I honestly didn't know that it did. I forgot that we had a virtual console.
Well, you want to help me with some of these reviews? This GameSpot here is kind of funny, man.
Sure thing, Dave. So GameSpot says that Ninja Gaiden is the abusive spouse of the NES era. It assaults you time and time again with its punishing difficulty, insidiously placed enemies, and rage-inducing boss fights. And yet, you'll keep running back for more. You look at its awesome cutscenes and experience its excellent jumping controls and fighting mechanics, and all the pain and suffering you've endured will just start to wash away. They continue to go on to say the key difference between this masochistically tough game and other masochistically tough games from this time period is that Ninja Gaiden doesn't use its difficulty level as a crutch. The underlying gameplay in Ninja Gaiden is good enough to keep you playing, no matter how many times it punches you in the face with some cheap enemy placement or completely insane boss fight. For those who like their classic games angry and challenging, Ninja Gaiden is one of the best examples of that style of game because it's hard and it's fun. And ninjas are
Hey, we
awesome.
just learned about ninjas. Ninjas are pretty awesome, huh?
That they are, though definitely much different than this game portrays them.
So, IGN, when it came out on the Virtual Console, noted that Ninja Gaiden is centered on its story, a great classic action platformer title from Tecmo in 1989. Gaiden's most notable and memorable innovation wasn't its fast gameplay or tight control, it was in how it conveyed its plot. Cinematic cutscenes shown before, after, and sometimes during the title's action stages painted vividly the world of demons, swords, and secret agents in which Ru Hayabusa found himself entwined. It was a novel approach to in game storytelling in an age where most other titles were content to provide the plot only in the instruction manual, if at all. But they went on to say to be well warned ahead of time. This isn't the kind of game you can pick up and breeze through on your first try. Completing the adventure takes practice and patience, both of which you'll likely be willing to invest given the solid and satisfying fun factor of the core gameplay, and two, given that you'll want to see how the story ends. Getting to the next cutscene, seeing the next piece of the plot, was a motivation not used before Ninja Gaiden in 1989. That novel narrative nature, paired with the high degree of difficulty, made the first Ninja Gaiden game a hit. So I think that that's a lot of fair points there. As always, we like to go from critics to gamers themselves. Got a few little Moby game reviews like normal. Rob, why don't you let the let the listeners know what Satoshi Kunsai had to say about this game?
Absolutely. So they had to say that the cutscenes in this game for 1989 were amazing. They convey the story in such a way that it seems like an anime OVA. Incidentally, there was a Ninja Gaiden OVA in Japan, but it was poorly written and animated, and Ryu was only a bit character. And Ryu was only a bit character in it. Blasphemy. And you get such a feel for the characters that you would think that they were alive and for real. The story is nothing short of excellent, and the game plays it out perfectly, breaking the action up into 6 acts of 2 to 5 stages each, for a grand total of 21 stages. The difficulty level in this game progresses steadily from stage to stage. The bosses fall in the same category as well, with a very easy first boss to a hair-yankingly hard boss.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll get to that final boss in just a moment. So Ivan Obrenatov here on Moby Games writes, "Oh my god, this is a masterpiece. Everything about this game reeks of awesomeness, and here is why. The gameplay. The game perfectly does what it's supposed to do. It's a side scroller about a ninja who tries to discover the truth behind his father's death and ends up fighting a demon. Actually, the story is much deeper, but I don't want to spoil everything. The gameplay is fast and smooth, but the game is extremely difficult. There are no bad controls or stupid glitches that contribute to the game's difficulty, so if you're really good at video games, you may beat it after several hours. The graphics. Not only does this game play nice, but it also looks pretty. It's one of the few NES games which has beautiful cutscenes which actually feel like watching a mini episode. Graphics are gorgeous and everything is represented perfectly the way it's supposed to be. The levels are nicely done and there's a nice variety to them. Lastly, the sound and music leaves me speechless. The game is one of the coolest soundtracks I've ever heard. Each soundtrack perfectly fits the level it was made for and immerses you into gameplay. Simply put, the music keeps you in grip from start to finish. The sound is also worth mentioning. Though there isn't much of a variety of sound during gameplay, they are well chosen. The explosion heard when you slice an enemy is quite satisfying. And look, Rob, a couple weeks ago we read about Bregalod. I think we had this argument a few weeks ago. Yeah, we had this argument a few weeks ago during Contra, and he is not in love with Ninja Gaiden. Why don't you take this one, see what he had to say about Ninja Gaiden?
Absolutely. So Breglad had to say that it's hard. Well, about how they made it hard. Enemies are loaded multiple times, even when you don't scroll at all, and this is very annoying. On every gap you have to jump over, they made one or multiple enemies just positioned to hit you down into the hole. And if you happen to be very quick and kill that enemy, a clone of it instantly relays the original. This tends to be very annoying and frustrating. Also, it's a shame that all graphics quality were made into cutscenes and the main graphics were left over. There is very few different enemies and bosses. The non-playable characters that appear during story scenes appear on the main screen at all, and this looks weird indeed. Like if they don't exist at all outside of cutscenes. I'd almost prefer cutscenes in the main game's graphics, with characters moving and doing the same thing. It would look less cool, but definitely would make the player feel like a story has something to do with the game. Here, it looks like they picked a random story that has nothing to do with the game.
Meh. Well, let's talk about all these critic reviews because we made time to play this game, did we not?
That we
Yeah,
did.
yeah. So I debated having this conversation because it was not a pleasant experience, was it?
It I will say this, it was fine for me all the way up until the last boss fight. Everything prior to that, it just took a small amount of time to figure out, but once you figure out, it was pretty quick to get through. I did struggle until literally stage 6 to learn how to use the abilities, so I'm sure it could have been even easier to get through up to that point, but anyway, but yeah, the final boss, it's for someone like myself who struggles to deal with multiple things at a time in a video game, it's infuriating, to say the least. I mean, I'm used to Dark Souls, so it's hilarious to say, "Oh, how is this game difficult?" Even then, you're used to a couple of small bosses, something hitting you for a small amount, or you're used to one or two big dudes, and you kind of learn their patterns very quickly, and it's easy. With this, I just felt that for me, every time I tried getting into a pattern, the pattern would change, and it just so I had too much going on at the screen. The second stage of the boss specifically,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
shoots fireballs that can somehow come back at you from the bottom of the screen, and when those ones started coming back up and the ones were still coming from above, I just got overwhelmed. When it was just 2 at a time, it wasn't so bad, but more often than not, I was finding 3, 4 on the screen at a time, and with a fifth thing just taking up a quarter of your screen, it's kinda tough to avoid.
yeah.
How was your experience,
Well,
Dave?
I beat it for the first time, and I don't think I ever did that back in the NES era. So that's pretty exciting. Yeah, it ramps up pretty quick. I feel like it's pretty easy for the first three, maybe 4-1. It starts. I feel like it starts to hit cray cray and get pretty nuts, and then you just. You're right. That last boss sucked. That just that was frustrating. The whole run of last bosses sucks, but it's a hard game. Now, with that being said, going back and actually like looking at the cutscenes from a different perspective, they are impressive. This was a NES game 5 years into the NES era, 1989, and they were doing a lot of really cool things with the cutscenes back then. I can absolutely see why everyone really talks up this as a cinematic masterpiece because it there isn't really anything like it from that time period. Well, I mean afterwards, but not before it. You know what I mean?
Right,
Um,
absolutely.
it is funny now though, looking back at some of the localization, some of the words and the way things are said are kind of funny to me. I think, yeah, anything I say is gonna be a spoiler for anyone, so I guess I'm not gonna go into it. But there's a few sentences in there here and there that the localization left a little bit to be desired, and it's kind of to me it was more comical in the middle of like what's supposed to be a dramatic scene, but that's okay. I might just be picky because I write all the time, so it's a dorky thing. But yeah, I mean, I can say I beat it. That's nice, huh?
Yeah, absolutely. I can also say that I beat it, as frustrating as it was.
I do stand by earlier in this episode, we talked about the remakes, and I told you that, it was more like a Devil May Cry, which it is. They brought it to the 3D era and they made it a hack and slash. And it's still really difficult, but I think you really like it. Also, to be fair, we squeezed this game into a few hours of prep time before we were recording, and that probably didn't help. If you had the time to put it down, come back and relook at those patterns, you probably maybe would have had a little bit more enjoyable of experience, but you know, life is what it is and we had to fit things in where we could.
Absolutely.
Well, I mean that's pretty much Ninja Gaiden. Do you have anything that you want to add about it?
It's hard. It sucks. Play it.
I mean, to be fair, every game that we talk have we I don't think we've really talked about a game that we wouldn't recommend. I mean, we wouldn't have made it a topic if we wouldn't recommend it. There might be one sometime. It'll be interesting to think about if there's ever a game that we're like, yeah, don't bother. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I don't know. I think that most, if not all, games deserve to be tried, even if they're absolute garbage, like the extraterrestrial.
I agree. I agree. I have I have that philosophy too, where I think everything should be tried at least once. So, well, that'll do it for the the game topic, it was a busy week for us, so I'm gonna admit I don't have a quiz for you this week, so you're off the hook for quiz questions.
Woohoo!
Does that make this a little bit
Hell
better?
yeah, it does.
Yeah, I figured it would. Oh, yeah, that's gonna happen sometimes, that's gonna happen sometimes, but I do have a gaming question of the week, huh?
Ooh, what do you got?
So if you could have one power from any video game character, which would it be? One power. I know we talked about who would you wanna be before, what world, things like that, but just take one thing away from any single video game character. What do you think would be a good one?
Hmm.
There's so many to choose from, isn't there?
Yeah, that there are. There are so many.
I mean, let's see. When we talked about what character you wanted to be your avatar in Forza so you could drive cars. What if you could rewind like your avatars in Forza so you could do stupid crap? No, because if you crash, you still crash and have to deal with it. Does that make sense? Like you'd have that moment maybe of impact, and then you'd rewind it. You still have to experience that moment of impact. Is that morbid that I'm looking at it from that perspective?
I mean, I think it's a little overthought, but
So what other video game character like have cool things? Like could you jump high like Mario or use a flower or do that teleport thing that the guy from Dishonored uses? Get super strength from the Crackdown guys? Or maybe you want to be an RPG guy and use like, a summon from Final Fantasy. Like, nah, those would not be practical in the real world at all, would they?
no, and that's the thing. Like trying to think of something that would be practical. Like Kirby would be a good choice because you just suck up other people with powers and get their powers. But like, I don't. There's no one with cool stuff around. So who do you like? Maybe Bill Gates for his money, but I don't know. Like, if you're doing that,
Well,
why
so
not just
what
be
would
someone who can like make money or make gold? And I don't
Yeah. Yeah, but we gotta take a power from someone. Like my thought is what if I could take like heavy persuasion powers from like my Fallout characters, but that's not really a power. Um, what about the infamous guy? Well, I keep going back to like all the super strength.
You speak of games that I don't really know that well.
Uh,
I don't know games that have powers that I'm thinking of. Like Crackdown is about the only one I can
yeah,
think of at the moment.
Crackdown's got all the super strength and
You know, I want to be like the apprentice from Jedi or from
ooh,
Star
you
Wars:
want
The
you
Force
want Jedi
Awakens or whatever
powers.
the game, The Force Unleashed. Yeah, I would like to be able to use, and it's more broad than just games, but because there are Star Wars video
I'll
games,
take
I
it.
could.
I'll
So
take
that is
it.
it. I would have to say being able to use the Force because the Force has many uses. It can be used for good, it can be used for evil, it can be used to move things, but it can also be used, as you said,
Persuasion.
for persuasion. There are many applications for one that is well trained in the
Hmm.
Force. What about yourself, Dave?
I don't know. I like I said, I just went through that whole list. I really don't know what I would pick. Uh, what about like the devil trigger stuff from Devil May Cry?
I
Again, what
mean,
would
I,
you
I
what would you
suppose we could
use
find a
that
use
for?
for it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, to that end, something
What
like,
about what about the
I guess,
dragon
like,
shout from Skyrim?
ooh, a Fusro Da, that would be cool.
Yeah, wouldn't it wouldn't that be kinda neat to just go around, like and maybe it doesn't have to be that, but when you scream at people, like, they just go flying
Okay, that would be
everywhere.
pretty cool.
That would be really funny. Oh, man. Well, I was thinking back to the guy from Infamous because he can control electricity. I think controlling electricity has a lot of really practical uses. Or, again, we're overthinking it.
Oh,
What about
Sonic.
Sonic speed would be
Super
cool.
speed. Yeah, man. I mean, come
Hey,
on. You'd be able to get anywhere super
I
fast.
got a cool one. You are a big fan of Assassin's Creed, aren't you?
That I
What
am.
about Eagle Vision?
Ooh, you're right. That's a good point.
I mean,
Being able to just see the guy that you want to hit in the crowd.
just
Mhm.
seeing from that perspective, I think
Yeah, as someone who wears glasses, it would be incredible to be able to have that kind of eyesight.
I think that one would be neat. Like I said, I mean, I went to Dishonored because he can teleport. I think teleportation would be a cool one.
What about possession, like in Bioshock Infinite?
Yeah, that's a cool one. If you're gonna steal from Star Wars, you can steal from X-Men and take regenerative healing from Wolverine.
Oh, good
Or
call.
what about stuff like, you know, time manipulation, what games do it? Prince of Persia, or what's a more modern game that manipulates time? That would be pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that probably would.
Speaking of BioShock, because you talked about possession, in Infinite, they do interdimension travel. So how cool would it be to just go to a parallel universe to do whatever you need to do and come back? You know what I mean?
Would be pretty cool.
I think personally that I really like I just really like the uh dragon shout. I think it'd be funny as hell to have the dragon shout. I just think I think it'd be hilarious to have the dragon shout and just scream at everyone and have it physically manifest itself. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think myself, like thinking of that large list, I think that either like Sonic super speed or time manipulation would have to be it because you just never have enough time, and if you can get places faster or slow down time, you get more of it.
Very true. Well, that'll do it for our gaming question of the week. If you have a question that you'd like us to answer, you can go to our website at www.memorycardlane.com and submit it. We'd love to hear from you. Before we wrap up today's episode, well, I mean, this is the wrap up. Rob, is there anything that you'd like to add?
As always, just want to say thank you to everyone listening. It's a lot of fun to be here, even if you're not here, but hopefully you are here, and if you are, let us know. You can go on over to www.memorycardlane.com and let us know what you're thinking. Maybe there you can also join our Discord. You may also look at our calendar to see what we've talked about in the past, what we're going to talk about in the future. For those in the past, we can see the show notes and archives. You're also able to submit stories and questions to us. So let us know that you're involved and what you're thinking.
One other thing you'll
Anything
find
else they can find over on the website?
There you go. One other thing that you'll find on our website is a link to our Patreon. Guys, if you like what you've been listening to, you can support us for only $2 a month. That's it. Plain and simple. Support us $2 a month. You can go to patreon.com/slash trip down memory card lane or visit our website at www.memorycardlane.com and click support. And I think with a website plug and a Patreon plug, that's all we're going to do for bothering you today. And that'll about do it, huh? Huh? Rob, we ready to take it out?
I think we are, Dave.
All
I
right.
don't have anything else. What about
No, I
you?
do not. So, guys, next week we're going to be looking at an absolutely beautiful game. It's best known for developing companionship between strangers, despite there being no ability to actually talk to one another in a traditional sense. Many gamers have called this game a moving and emotional experience, and others refer to it as a complete work of art. The year it came out, it won several Game of the Year awards, and its soundtrack was nominated for a Grammy Award, so it was looked at outside of gaming too. And though it's not a traditional action packed video game, it really is adored by many. It's a short game, short but sweet at only 2 hours long. It's Journey, which released for the PlayStation 3 back in March of 2012. So, if you want to look back at Journey, the video game, we're going to talk about it and the forms of communication it utilized, and probably communication in general as we take next week's trip down memory card lane.
Ba-da-da-ba-ba-ba-ba-ya, boo-wah, ba